Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs.
Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. The herb we are going to discuss today is mugwort. Now, we have talked about mugwort somewhat in the past under the broader category of the artemisias. You know, the one that comes to mind is wormwood, of course, or in recent times, the artemisia species called sweet Annie has become very popular because it has antiviral properties and it is good to have on hand. It was a lifesaver during the Spanish flu. Very good to have on hand for cold and flu seasons and with COVID going around. But I really want to focus today on mugwort, Artemisia vulgaris. This is from my book, Medicinal Weeds and Grasses, and I'm going to share some new information with you, or information at least I haven't told you before. Certainly nothing new under the sun, as the saying goes. And of course, that brings me to, I'd be remiss without just mentioning the horrible war that's just broken out in Israel. And, you know, over 1,000 dead reported today, hundreds kidnapped, looks like including 24 American citizens. Pray for peace. That's it. That's all we can do. Pray for peace. Um, it's a horrible situation, and with everything going on in Ukraine and China threatening Taiwan and such, we could topple into World War III in the blink of an eye, and we don't exactly have a competent commander in chief who could safely navigate those waters, to say the least. So pray. That's I'm just going to leave it right there. Now again, before we get into mugwort, let's talk about today's recipe. And I mean it really was absolutely ridiculous when YouTube and when Facebook basically kicked me off about 3 years ago when I was like one of the first people to say, this COVID virus looks like it may have come from a bioweapons lab in China. And everybody started calling me anti-Chinese racist, which is ridiculous. As y'all know, I spent about 10 years studying traditional Chinese medicine. For a good period of time there, about all my friends were Chinese, but I still have one very good, pretty good friend uh, that, he's a food friend. He's from Guangdong, China, and they like hot, spicy food. So we get along really well. He's the one that said to me a few years ago that I was crazy like him because I like food too hot. Well, the other day he gave me some homemade chili oil. Stuff's wonderful. It is so hot though. I mean, one thing about chili oil, first of all, it varies by, every family makes their own. Every region has a little twist on it. Um, if you've ever had Chinese chili oil, the oil is blazing hot. I mean, a few drops of it on your food is so much hotter than like biting into a habanero pepper. I mean, it's just crazy, right? The secret is all the little bits of chili flake that are sitting at the bottom of that oil. They're much more mild than the oil itself. So you can really use it and incorporate it into your meals. It's very medicinal as well as being delicious. But use the flakes and just a little bit of the oil. I made the mistake again the other night after he gave me some. I put like a tablespoon of chili oil on, some rice that I was having with my meal. And wow, that was hot. That was extremely hot. Like I said, hotter than habanero. We're talking more like Carolina Reaper ghost pepper level heat. And then I remembered the way you're supposed to eat it. And this morning I had some with breakfast, just a little bit of chili flakes on some leftover roast beef from the night before, and it was very good, very very good actually, pot roast actually. But so like I said, there are many variations, and I looked around. This is not a recipe that's in my book, The Omnivore's Guide to Home Cooking. This is the recipe I got from him, and he not the most detailed description. So I found a couple of websites I'm going to recommend. Okay, the first one is I've used this site so many times. It's called Walks of Life, thewalksoflife.com. TheWoksoflife. And the other one, I really like the name of it. It's actually called the Omnivore's Cookbook.com. So, I had no idea the site even existed. When I was looking around to get some tips, trying to fill in the blanks of his recipe, I found this really great website called the Omnivore's Cookbook. Now, of course, my cookbook is the Omnivore's Guide to Home Cooking. So I'm really thrilled to recommend this website to you. It's all about Chinese cooking, and it's like real well. She does like 101 type basic stuff, but then she gets into some really complicated recipes. So I was very impressed. I love Chinese food. I mean, who doesn't? Specifically like Hunan style, yeah, Szechuan style, and that Guangdong, man, that's really good and hot, crazy hot. I think the ones that do, maybe the ones that do the Walks of Life are actually from that same region. So the thing about this chili oil, maybe you've seen them make it before, and they've got like a ceramic dish, and there's like all this like chili flakes, crushed red pepper in the bottom of it, and they pour hot oil in there, and it just sizzles and pops, and it's very dramatic, right? Several steps beyond that. It's not just oil and chili flakes. First of all, the trick is to use the right hot peppers. My friend uses Sichuan chili flake. You can get it from an Asian grocery store. He owns a restaurant, so he gets the stuff, bulk. It has a much uh, more depth of flavor, and as the folks on Walks of Life, I think it was, said, a lot fewer seeds than just regular old crushed red pepper that we'd buy, in the spice out of the grocery store. He said you could also use the dried Thai peppers. There's like bird peppers that are just like blow your mind hot. Yeah, I can. I think he uses a little of both actually. It's one of those secrets he was just kind of hinting at. And wow, those are hot. Now I love Thai food. And when I go into a Thai restaurant, there's a really authentic one I like to go to. I'll say they'll ask me, how hot do I want my curry, and I say I want it Thai hot, and they look at me like, "Are you serious?" And I said, "No, I want it Thai hot like you would eat it." And you take a couple bites of it, and your scalp starts sweating. I mean, those are really hot peppers. But the other is a mix of spices. Okay, and that is what really, really varies. I mean, they use cardamom, star anise, different, basically anything you could think of going in, like, five spice, that mix of Chinese spice blend. They use these, clove would be good. Cinnamon. Cinnamon is a very common spice that's added to it. Now, you're seeing these are a lot of medicinal herbs. I mean, a little of this each day is actually going to be really good for a lot of inflammatory conditions. Definitely would help with arthritis, respiratory issues, good for digestion. And you can make it hot to your taste, okay? If you don't like it as hot as I do, you can use less of the chili flake. And all these proportions are going to be on those two websites. And like I said, I think they're great. Um, I was very impressed. I've got some really cool Asian cookbooks that I've collected over the years. And I mean, wow, I wish these resources like those two websites had been around when I started trying to learn to cook Chinese food. Let's say, without a doubt, my first like 50 attempts at fried rice were utter failures. I mean, seriously, they didn't tell me the secret of in the books that you're supposed to use like leftover rice cooked the day before. Yeah. In the fridge overnight. Comes out, it's nice and hard, and it fries up, and it doesn't get all gummy. Yeah, yeah, they didn't tell me that. And you need a nice hot wok. So anyway, I actually use my wok over a grill because my kitchen stove just does not get rocket hot. Now, a young lady I knew for a while, she swore by her electric wok. I've never used one, but anyway, she made some pretty good food. Anyway, so the other question on chili oil is whether or not to include garlic. What you do is you heat the oil. Now, I think Walks of Life said heat it to like, I think 220 to 240 in that range, and that Omnivore's Cookbook, great name, yeah, again, uh, she said heat it like 340. So this is a wide variation in temperature. And again, I think everybody kind of has their own home recipe. So you heat the oil, and in the pot with the oil, you put your dry spices. You put your star anise, the cinnamon stick, your black cardamom, uh, various things. And there's quite an array that you can choose from. If you're using garlic, you would also put sliced garlic or a shallot or whatever you want to use in at this time. And when it's brown, before it burns, scoop it out. Okay? That's sort of the controversy is because using fresh garlic or other alliums will make the oil more prone to spoilage. The and it can actually be dangerous. It could actually I don't know if it could really cause botulism, but that's warned against. So if you make your chili oil that way, you're definitely going to have to keep it in the fridge and use it quickly. I would make small batches and just enough that I could use within, a couple of weeks and keep it in the fridge. Even though in China, for the most part, where they do infuse their chili oil with garlic, they don't seem to take much precaution with it at all. But then again, they eat a lot of it, so maybe they're just going through it very quickly. So that's it. You put your spices in there, you let them cook for a little bit, you don't let anything burn, you scoop it out and strain it, and then you need to have your chili flake, and this would be, a pretty goodly amount. Let's say you got, I don't know, a couple of cups of oil in the pot, and you've got maybe at least a half cup of dried chili flake in a heat-proof bowl, like a ceramic bowl, because you're going to be pouring hot oil right on top of the chili flakes in the bowl. And that's when all that sizzling and all that happens, and it's really cool. That's it. Just pour the hot oil over there, let it steep, and basically when it's cooled to room temperature, um, taste it and give it a little salt to taste. They actually have some proportions, on their websites, and that's great. But I think it really is something you can personalize in many ways using various spices and like I said, if you want to use garlic or not, but you could use other peppers as well. If you want that real authentic Chinese style chili sauce, I think the Sichuan pepper, that's what they both recommend, by the way, these two websites. Like I said, my friend also uses the Thai hot peppers, those little tiny ones. I, you know, I think you could experiment and kind of come up with your own. Use some of those, dried peppers on the Mexican aisle, your guajillos and all those, chili de árbol and all those really good ones. You could probably just take some hot peppers out of your garden and dry them and then crush them up and really tailor it to your taste. As I've said before, um, jalapenos do not dry well. They tend to mold on the inside before they dry on the outside. So what I do, and by the way, that chili oil got my nose running. So if you hear me sniffle a little bit, that hot stuff will really get the sinuses cleared out. But The jalapenos, what I do when I have a bunch of them, I usually pickle them, but if I will dry some because I like to use them in, chili and different things. But what I do is I hang them up and I let them just dry for a few days, just kind of like half dry. And if they so any signs of spoilage, forget it. But when they just start to wrinkle a little bit, I will then take them and smoke them when I cook barbecue. So I make hickory smoked jalapenos. The smoke, what it cooks them, it preserves them. I can then let them continue to dry out completely, and I just keep them in a jar with with the lid not sealed all the way. Really, I don't want any moisture build up in there. And when I want to use one in some chili or something, I pull out this nice smoky, hot, rich tasting pepper and just crumble it up, right in the pot while I'm cooking. Well, you could certainly make a chili oil out of that, and that would be really unique with a smoked chili oil flavor. That yeah, I'm absolutely going to do that. That the next year, I did not grow a lot of peppers this year at all. Uh, really, just we got a lot of rain. We had a ton of rain, a lot, and it was not a good year for growing peppers where I live. But I got a few poblanos, just enough to get by. The next time I make a big batch of those smoked, dried jalapeno peppers, you better believe I'm going to make some chili oil and probably would use a little garlic with that. And, maybe alter the spices a little bit. Maybe use cumin instead of cinnamon. I could definitely see that, yeah, I mean, the anise would still probably be very much to my taste because I love the flavor of anise. Maybe black peppercorns and cloves, just give it a twist and try a different thing. But yeah, so warning: if you go into a Hunan style, especially Guangdong or Sichuan Chinese restaurant, and you get the chili oil, it will probably melt your face off. So if you make it at home, you have a lot of control over that. I remember the first time he ever served that to me, and I had it seemed like it was a curry, and I said I want the curry extra hot and spicy, and he's like, yeah, you don't want it as spicy as I'd have it. I'm like, yeah, I want it extra hot and spicy. And so I sat down and I just poured this whole. It was probably maybe 2 to 3 ounces of chili oil. I just doused it. I had no idea. I didn't taste it first. And at least, I opened a cold beer and took a bite, and he's laughing at me, knows what to expect. I don't. Wow. I mean, it was so hot. So I start drinking the beer, to cool my tongue down. And like, when I finished that meal, I went directly to sleep. I almost like blacked out. And it wasn't the alcohol, it was the heat. It was the intense heat. Probably the combination of the two. But I didn't have more than like 2 beers with my meal, so it wasn't like passing out or something. But I mean, that chili sauce will mess you up if you are not used to it. Ginger is a nice addition to it. You can use. I'm sure you can put turmeric in there. I mean, you can see how this has a lot of good antiseptic, antiviral, immune system enhancing compounds, anti-inflammatory, great anti-inflammatory. And actually, you could probably use it topically like you would a capsaicin ointment. I mean, you would probably want to leave the garlic out if you're going to walk around with chili oil on your skin, but it's going to burn you like the dickens. And then, which is really good for aching joints. So anyway, now let's get into mugwort. And mugwort. Mugwort, I think, has a pleasantly bitter flavor. It's not anywhere near as intense as wormwood, but I don't mind the flavor of wormwood either. They all have a fascinating history. It's very likely that the artemisias were among the first herbs used by ancient man. And as the word wormwood implies, um, they were good for getting rid of intestinal parasites and could also help purify water to some extent. The mints, the sages, all of those are good against intestinal worms and various other things. The mugwort and wormwood you can also rub on your skin. They'll help keep mosquitoes away. Who knows? But anyway, more than likely, the first teas were made in an attempt to use this herb that they had seen repel vermin, I guess you would say, in an attempt to sterilize water, in an attempt to make contaminated or potentially contaminated water drinkable. You have to remember that clean, as they call what potable water, is a very modern thing. Our ancestors, more often than not, would get sick from drinking water, which is why they mostly drank beer and wine. Our ancestors drank a ton of beer and wine. Uh, I mean, you can just go back, colonial times. Just go back to the time our founding fathers were writing the Declaration, the Constitution, clear up through the Civil War. I mean, there was not a lot of good water, and beer was a beverage you had with breakfast. And people, make ridiculous statements saying, "Oh, well, it was low alcohol beer." No, actually, it really wasn't, because the alcohol had to be high enough to prevent spoilage or to slow spoilage. And of course, these bitter herbs were added to beer, not only to counter the sweetness of barley and such, but also to help prevent spoilage. That's actually why mugwort has the name. It was an herb that was added to beer to bitter it and preserve it, much as we use hops now. If you are a home brewer, I would really encourage you to experiment with mugwort and other of the bitter herbs people used to use. They have some very interesting medicinal properties. Mugwort, in particular, we'll get into all the medicinal properties, but it's been known to really help people dealing with grief or trauma. It has unique properties in that way. Uh, our ancestors considered it as somewhat of a magical plant, and modern medical science has not, well, not that they've really looked into it, but they have not been able to explain its psychological properties. And it does. If it's burned like an incense, it causes lucid dreams. People used to say those were prophetic dreams or something. I'm not going to go that far. I don't really believe in prophetic dreams for the most part. Um, but those lucid dreams, that's why it was much used in ancient pagan religions for that purpose. But whereas like the English and Germans and such just put it in their beer, little different priorities, obviously. But let's talk about some of the medicinal properties. The Artemisia family, and that's a whole family of herbs, like I said. It even includes American sagebrush, which is not culinary sage, by the way. Uh, but it's actually very closely associated with ancient Greece, and it's actually named after the Greek goddess Artemis. The Cloverleaf Farm Encyclopedia of Herbal Encyclopedia tells us this botanical classification of this genus of some 200 species, it's a big family, was derived from Artemisia, the sister and wife of the Greek Persian king Mausolus. So his sister was also his wife. That's always a recipe for disaster. And she ruled after his death in 353 BC. Artemisia was a noted botanist and medical researcher, and to honor her husband slash brother, she built a magnificent tomb called the Mausoleum, which was one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. It seems that Pliny the Elder gave both examples in his writing on the plants in explanation of how the herb was named, the other being that it was named after the Greek god Artemis. So, goddess, anyway. Dioscorides wrote, um, he gives a description of where to grow and how to look for it. These are easy plants to spot once you get used to them, and I definitely think, use a plant ID app. As I said, I don't like to put pictures in my books because it's just a snapshot of a plant in one location at one time, and yours may be growing in different conditions, and you're looking at it a different time of year. I think it's better to just go to like a good, like here I would go to the North Carolina State Horticultural website, and they have a database of all the plants that grow in North Carolina with people who've submitted pictures from like almost every county in the state and at different times of year. So if I find one plant, I'm going to find like 37 pictures of it growing in different places at different times. That's a very useful tool. Otherwise, field guides or Thomas Elpel's Botany in a Day. Those are great places to start. But yeah, after you learn to recognize it, you will, and you'll also notice that like ragweed, Ambrosia artemisiaefolia, and you look at the leaf and you say, well, oh, well, the leaf looks a lot like wormwood. Ah, now I see why this plant has that name. And see, that's how you learn to identify plants. You learn a little bit of what the Latin word means. It's usually a descriptive characteristic, or it'll be named after the person who discovered it. Like up in my region, the great French botanist André Michaux came through in the 1700s, and we have so many plants that are Michaux is the last word, the second word in the official name, just meaning that Andre Michaux was the first one to identify it. We have these beautiful Turk's cap lilies that grow all over the place, and those are actually Lilii Michauii, if I remember correctly. So Dioscorides mentions that the scent of mugwort was sweeter than that of the other artemisias. Specifically, he was talking wormwood. And it does have a very nice smell, which is probably why people started burning it as an incense. Um, well, it would drive the bugs out of the room, help get rid of anything from mosquitoes to bed bugs, and it smelled pretty good. And people stunk a lot because they didn't bathe a lot, and they sweat a lot, and they didn't have anything to combat that. So anything that smelled good was valuable in the ancient world. And then they found out it was giving them these, lucid dreams. Just really seems to like intensify the dream state. So he said of both of the two artemisias he discussed, they both warm and relieve, boiled they are good, put into woman's baths for driving out the menstrual flow and afterbirth, for inflammation of the womb, breaking of the stones, urinary and kidney stones, stoppage of urine. Much of the herb is applied to the lower part of the bowels, induces the menstrual flow, and the juice kneaded together with myrrh draws from the womb as many things as does bathing. Okay. Also should be mentioned that all the artemisias are terribly dangerous to use during pregnancy. Um, I mean, anything that has vermifuge, anything that kills worms, could easily cause a miscarriage, and it's going to do a great deal of harm to the mother. Okay, if taken in a dose of that strength, um, you know, good chance both mother and child will die. So. Um, He says, if anyone has the herb artemisia with him while traveling, it dissolves weariness if you wear it on your feet. And it actually does. You may be familiar with the liniment called Absorbing Junior. Well, that's actually contains artemisia. So it has the anti-inflammatory properties. So the ancient Greeks would put them in their shoes, and yeah, it very quite effective, and also good for arthritis and such as that, sore muscles and joints. In fact, he says, after the blood has hardened around the joints, take the bigger branches with rosaceum, rose oil, and having boiled them in a pot, rub the sick man all over with this as he goes to sleep. And that helps swollen joints, essentially. He said soothes slow, painful urination and a form of tetanus. And he gets into all the many names it went under. It went under many names. Now, may know that wormwood, of course, is mentioned in the Bible as being a bitter herb. Well, mugwort also has a tradition. Miss Grieve tells us that mugwort was traditionally associated with John the Baptist. She said in the Middle Ages the plant was known as Cingulum Sancti Johannes, it being believed that John the Baptist wore a girdle of it in the wilderness. There were many superstitions connected with it. It was believed to preserve the wayfarer from fatigue, sunstroke, wild beasts, and evil spirits generally. A crown made from its sprays is worn on St. John's Eve to give security from evil possession. And in Holland and Germany, one of its names is St. John's plant because of the belief that if gathered on St. John's Eve, it gave protection against diseases and misfortune. Well, I guess I should point out that I'm not actually stating that to be true. Um, I like the lore of the plants, the legends that are connected with them, and many of our medicinal herbs have had been associated, with religious significance throughout the last 2,000 years or so. And to me, I find that fascinating because I included some of that in my book, The History and Practice of Christian Herbal Medicine. Some idiot reviewer got on Amazon and said that I was promoting like something like magic talismans and witchcraft. I mean, ridiculous, okay? I'm just giving you the history of the plant and the lore that is actually quite, interesting, and it's really part of our history, and it also emphasizes how important these herbs were to people's lives before the era of modern pharmaceuticals and when people were more, connected to nature. I mean, I'm just telling you what the facts are. I'm not saying I either believe it or, am promoting it, but that's, neither here nor there. Um, Remember, y'all, good reviews help sell my books. Bad reviews really hurt. And, you know, um, there's nothing I can do when someone puts a false review on Amazon. I complain and they don't do a thing about it. When someone says something about one of my books that is patently untrue, there's nothing I can do about it. So I rely on, you know, 5 or 10 good reviews to offset that. And of course, I can't put a review down for myself. They don't allow that either. So I really do depend on y'all in that regard. And I appreciate those good reviews. Many of you have reviewed my books, and I am very grateful for that. Miss Grieve mentioned Mugwort's popularity in Germany. And so, of course, the next obvious place to turn for information would be St. Hildegard von Bingen's work, Physica, written around 1100. She said mugwort is very hot and its use is of great value. If it is cooled and eaten as a puree, this is actually eating the plant as a pot herb, by the way, which probably wouldn't be half bad. I mean, it's going to be a little bitter. Collard greens are a little bitter. Turnips are a little bitter. I'm going to give that a try next year. Too late this year. She said if it is cooled and eaten as a puree, it heals the intestines and warms a cold stomach. But if someone eats or drinks something which has given him pain, then he should cook and eat warmed mugwort with meat or lard as a puree, or with any other condiment. It will attract the rotten matter which has been in the previously ingested food or drink and chase it away. In other words, um, eating mugwort was her remedy for food poisoning. If bad humors gather in some part of the body, it's going to be inflammation essentially, flowing out from broken skin where there is no poison wound. The person should take mugwort and express its juice. To the juice, he should add a smaller amount of honey. He should spread this across the afflicted area and then cover it with an egg white and tie it with a cloth. He should do this till it's better. Now, this would be the sort of antiseptic properties of the plant. The honey is also very good in that regard. And cover it with an egg white. That's what people used for they had band-aids and such, was actually an egg white. So it would also help with the pain and inflammation. St. Hildegard's use of mugwort, like I said, reminds me a lot of the Southern tradition of pot liquor. That was my family's primary go-to remedy. My grandfather, my great grandfather, my grandparents, grandmothers, and everybody. Whenever someone had an upset stomach or lack of appetite or anything, it was you go take they call it the liquor, but it's just the broth essentially from cooked greens, collard greens, turnips, mustard. Usually add a little vinegar to it and drink it, and it does settle a stomach. And for if you're really sick, you put a little cornmeal in there and make a gruel, and that was the main food for invalids, probably the first 150, 200 years of this country. That was still a go-to. And yes, I know 200 years was like 1976, right? But I actually meant from colonial times, not to actually the founding of the country. Though in my family, it was still being done. In Poland, Sophie Hodorowicz-Nab tells us the plant had an infinite variety of uses around the house, both medical and magical. Again, I'm not saying it's actually magical. I'm just telling you this is traditional lore from Poland. Mugwort collected from 9 different fields was thought to increase a woman's fertility. In the Kalis area, a baby was bathed in mugwort and thyme in order to give the child strength. And that may have prevented some early childhood illnesses. So, there could have been a real reason for that. Um, in the, I guess, Radom or Rodham area, mugwort was tucked in the eaves of the house in order to protect it against uncleanliness on St. John's Eve. Well, it's good for driving away vermin, keeping the bugs out, and mice don't like it either. Both wormwood and mugwort were placed in the coffin in the belief that it would delay the decomposition of the body, and it probably did. Um, Again, it has those antimicrobial properties. In a Jesuit publication from 1750, beside numerous medications for all types of illness and ailments, there is also an attachment regarding spells and charms which indicate that mugwort protects against the evil eye, and they recommended carrying it on your person from St. John's to St. John's, that is all year round. Evil eye is a very ancient belief in many cultures. It's essentially a curse. I mentioned before, speaking of Israel, I had a very good friend from Tel Aviv. Hope she's okay. I haven't heard from her in years. She is an ethnic Jew who was born, the only one in her family, oddly enough, there must have been a recessive gene, with blue eyes and blonde hair. Petite, beautiful little thing with blue eyes and blonde hair. But some of the more traditional Jews and most of the Arabs in the area thought she had the evil eye. So, as much as she could, she would try to pass as an American. Um, it's one thing to have an evil eye and be an American. It's another thing to have an evil eye and be Jewish in a Palestinian territory. Obviously that would be make you a bit of a target, we should say. But my word, was she smart, so talented. Actually, her boss was Kinky Friedman's girlfriend. Kinky Friedman, the country musician, mystery novelist, ran for governor of Texas a couple of times. Real character, real character. And that's how I got to know Kinky Friedman. So you never know how things work. I mean, you never think you're going to meet a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jewish girl from Tel Aviv. His boss is Kinky Friedman's girlfriend, and just before he ran for governor of Texas, and I was working in politics and journalism at the time, and I get this phone call one morning, like 8 a.m., and this woman says, "Mr. Friedman would like to know if you'll endorse him for governor." Like, okay, what's Kinky up to now? And I'm like, well, does Mr. Friedman know that I'm not actually from Texas? And next thing I hear is this gravelly voice, "Hey, hillbilly, I hear you ain't from Texas. Why the hell not?" you know. Oh, he's a character. He's a real character. Haven't spoken with him in 20 years or so, but he actually got in touch on Twitter a couple months ago. He just gave a big thumbs up to something I'd posted, and it was cool. I don't know if he remembers me or not, but always good to hear from the Kinkster. But anyway, going on with the Polish tradition, she said that young maidens often made a belt of mugwort to wear around their waist while singing and dancing around a midsummer fire. They believed this would ease pains in the lower back, and it would, just like the absorbing junior. So a lot of this stuff that seems to have like folklore or semi borderline magic actually has a lot of scientific foundation. The country villagers wiped their hands on mugwort to keep bees from stinging. As I've said, bugs don't like mugwort a whole lot. She also, very interestingly, described a fly trap made from sprinkling milk on the branches of mugwort and hanging them in the doorways. Now, we have big black flies here in the mountains of North Carolina, and some of them bite. So I need to try that. There's so many old ways people would keep flies from coming in their house. Like you may have seen, I think I've seen this mostly in Italian restaurants, like people who have just come over. Maybe it was Greek. I can't remember. They take like Ziploc bags and put water in them and hang them over the door, and that confuses the fly's eyesight, and they don't fly in. But in Poland, they would put milk on mugwort, let it dry, and hang it on doors and windows to keep the flies out. Hey, anything that keeps them out is good with me. John Gerard, writing some 400 years after St. Hildegard, tells us, this is going to be Elizabethan English, so I'm not going to try to read it all verbatim. He said that Pliny saith, or said, that mugwort doth properly cure women's diseases. Well, we've already explained that action. And that in like manner it helpeth the mother in the pain of the matrix. That actually is the womb. So anyway, old language, and we've already basically covered those uses. We'll get into more modern ideas on that in a little bit. Pliny apparently also said that the traveler or wayfaring man that tied the herb about him feeleth no wearisomeness at all. But Pliny also said, according to Gerard, that it would prevent all harm from poisons, so, and wild beasts and all kinds of stuff, and that it could be drunken against opium. So, overdose of opium. I don't know. I doubt it. Okay. I think if you got somebody overdosing with opium, um, probably some was it Narcan or something. You probably want to grab something like that. But that's what they thought in the ancient Greeks, and he mentions many of the ancient writers tending to witchcraft and sorcery and great dishonor of God. Wherefore I do of purpose omit them as things unworthy of my recording or your reviewing. Yeah, okay. Um, I think he's very wise in that because mugwort was actually used in a lot of potions that could be used to, what would you say, influence or a person, not always for good. And I think he was, yes, very wise to omit those potions. Mugwort pounded with oil of sweet almonds and laid to the stomach as a plaster cureth the pains and griefs of the same. So it would help with stomach cramps probably. Again, it's that antispasmodic property and why it's used again for arthritis and such. It cureth the shaking of the joints, including the palsy, and helpeth the contraction or drawing together of the nerves and sinews. Now let's see what Culpeper said. He was much more into superstition, but it looks like he made the same decision, which is good. Now he did say it was an herb of Venus, meaning it was particularly good for women's issues. Mugwort is good success put among other herbs that are boiled for women to apply as a hot decoction to draw down their courses, to help delivery of the birth and expel afterbirth, also for obstructions and inflammations of the mother. It breaks the stone and opens the urinary passage where they are stopped. The juice thereof, made up with myrrh and put under as a pessary, works the same effect, and so does the root also. Being made up with hog's grease into an ointment, it takes away the winds and hard knots and kernels, that are basically sores and infections and even infected swollen glands that grow about the neck and throat. It eases the pains about the neck more effectually if some field daisies be put with it. The herb itself, being fresh, or the juice thereof taken, is a special remedy upon the overmuch taking of opium. What do you know? There it pops up again some 1,500 years after, no, longer than that, 1,800 years after Pliny wrote. Pliny was what, 300 BC or something? I could be wrong on that, but yeah, I mean, at least 1,500 years. Probably longer, really. The 3 drams of powder of the dried leaves taken in wine is a speedy and best certain help for sciatica, and that is still a very good use. If you have muscle and joint pains, a little bit of mugwort in wine, or like I said, use it as your in place of hops with beer. Very good for arthritis and sciatic pains, muscle and back pains, and all that. A decoction thereof made with chamomile and agrimony and the place bathed therewith while it is warm, takes away the pains of the sinews and cramp. So he found it even better mixed with chamomile and agrimony, used topically. John Kehoe says of the Irish tradition, if pounded and applied with the oil of sweet almonds, it cures the pains of the stomach. So I think he actually means that internally. If the juice is mixed with the oil of roses and applied, it will ease the pains and aches of the joints and cramps. It also provokes menstruation. If added to a barrel of ale, it will prevent it from souring. Far from being an herb relegated to history, though, mugwort continued to be used and found to be of great use. Well, it still is in modern times, but when Miss Grieve was writing in the 1930s, they'd just gone through a world war, and people were using herbs in the field and at home because of lack of medicine. And so her books were very useful, and she really basically saved the British herbal tradition. She actually said that it has been suggested that the name mugwort may be derived not from mug, the drinking vessel, but from mugthay or mugaday, I think that's it, which was an old word for moth or maggot, because from the days of Dioscorides, the plant has been regarded, in common with wormwood, as useful for keeping off the attacks of moths. I don't know. Maybe it was, both words, but, being so commonly used in beers, I think it probably was more mug. Uh, but anyway, she said to use, let's see, the leaves. She used dried. She also collected the root. Medicinal actions. It has stimulant and slightly tonic properties, and is of value as a nervine and a minagogue, having also diuretic and diaphoretic actions. So it helps remove excess fluid, and helps with fevers. And a minagogue just means brings on menses. Nervine means it calms the nerves, and yes, it is very good for that use. Uh, she used it chiefly as an emmenagogue, and as a tea. She said it was particularly valued in palsy fits, epileptic, and similar affectations, being an old-fashioned popular remedy for epilepsy, especially in persons of a feeble constitution. Gerard says, Mugwort cureth the shakings of the joints. We already talked about Gerard. Um, Jethro Kloss, American herbalist here in the 20s, was very fond of it. He said it was a safe and excellent medicine for female complaints and for suppressed menstruation. Steep a teaspoonful in a pint of water for 20 minutes and drink 2 or 3 cups a day for a few days before the monthly period is expected. It's quite a bit of tea. Um, he said mugwort is very useful in overcoming inflammatory swellings, gravels, and stones in the kidneys and bladder to increase the flow of urine, and for fevers and gout. After using a poultice of chickweed or slippery elm, thoroughly bathe the affected part for some time with a hot tea made by steeping a tablespoon of mugwort in a pint of boiling water for 20 minutes. Bruises, whitlows or felons, which are sores on the finger, they're usually, I think they're bacterial. Abscesses, carbuncles, and sometimes even tumors will yield to this treatment if it is continued. Good for rheumatism and gout. Acute pain in the bowels and stomach can quickly be relieved by drinking the warm infusion and applying hot fomentations wrung out of the boiling infusion. That just basically means like soak a towel in it and put it on your stomach. Currently, Plants for a Future states, Mugwort has a long history of use in herbal medicine, especially in matters connected with the digestive system, menstrual complaints, and the treatment of worms. It is slightly toxic, however, and should never be used by pregnant women, especially in their first trimester, since it can cause a miscarriage. Prolonged dosages can damage the nervous system. Very important. That is true of all the artemisias, but especially of wormwood. It's thujone. Thujone can cause damage to the nervous system. The essential oil of it will kill you. Never take thujone essential oil. Some people have tried to make their own absinthe using the essential oil, and they've died. So don't do that. Don't ever do that. But it's a fairly safe herb if used responsibly. So, like they said, large prolonged dosage can damage the nervous system. Well, that's true of licorice as well. Don't underestimate the power of herbs. Just use them responsibly. Don't be afraid of an herb. Just learn about it. All parts of the plants are anthelmintic, means kills parasites, antiseptic, antispasmodic, carminative, settles the stomach, cholagogue, diaphoretic. And I meant to tell you what cholagogue meant last week, and I ran out of time. I think I promised to do that. If not, I thought it. Let me get the exact definition. Cholagogue is a substance that is supported by humoral practitioners to encourage the discharge of bile from the system. Not always a good thing, actually. So anyway, I don't need to get into that right now. Diaphoretic helps with fevers. Digestive, emmenagogue, we've already discussed. Expectorate brings up mucus from the lungs. Nervine, purgative, stimulant, slightly tonic, and used in treatments of women's complaints. The leaves are said to be appetizer, diuretic, hemostatic, and stomatic. They can be used internally or externally, and infusion of the leaves and flowering tops is used in the treatment of nervous and spasmodic affections, sterility, functional bleeding of the uterus, dysmenorrhea, asthma, and diseases of the brain. I don't know which diseases they are referring to. That's pretty vague. The leaves have an antibacterial action inhibiting the growth of Staphylococcus aureus, Bacillus typhi, B. dysentery bacteria, essentially, Streptococci, E. coli, B. subtilis, Pseudomonas, I can never pronounce that one right, etc. So you could see why this would have been included in food and beverage in ancient times before we had, well, nothing like pasteurization, but not even refrigeration or anything like that, or water filtration for that matter. The leaves are harvested in August and can be dried for later use. The stem is said to be anti-rheumatic, antispasmodic, and stomatic. The roots are tonic and antispasmodic. They are said to be one of the best stomatics when harvested in the autumn and used and dried for later use. The leaves placed inside the shoes are said to be soothing for sore feet. The compressed leaves and stems are used in moxibustion, which is where they put those. Never mind. You either know what it is or you don't. We don't need to get into that. Another report says that the down from the leaves is used. So, as Gerard wrote, there is quite a bit written of wormwood in the lore of witchcraft and superstition, and I'm going to follow the example of the British herbalist who said to omit those such may lead to the peril of souls. That said, mugwort is a remarkable medicinal herb, and according to St. Hildegard, it has some culinary uses too. I'll have to give that a try. It is very useful medicinally, but its emotional and psychological aspects may be particularly helpful in a time when so many people are suffering from depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, etc. It really should be studied by medical professionals. Probably won't be because, you can't make money on free herbs. You make money on pharmaceuticals. Uh, and mugwort, or Artemisia vulgaris, is absolutely free to all. And that's actually implied by its Latin name. Vulgaris means that it was a common plant. Vulgar meaning common. There is simply no money in easing the suffering of humanity with common herbs. But profit aside, there is great virtue. And next time I brew up some beer, I'll probably infuse it with mugwort, and it'll help me forget my troubles in a most pleasing way, as they used to say. And I've got a neighbor who's a Purple Heart combat veteran. I think he would probably like to join me in a mug of mugwort ale, given its properties. So anyway, y'all, that's going to wrap it up for today's show. Have a good one. And I'm going to try to remember not to have a large serving of chili oil before I do a podcast next time. I don't know if you could hear it or not, but man, I've been sniffling. I've been a little coughing a little bit. I mean, that stuff will really get the mucus flowing. There's no doubt about that. But it's so good for you. It's so good for you. If you can get that heat tailored to your taste and use the spices that you enjoy, that's a medicinal condiment that's going to make your food taste better and probably make you healthier. Why not? And it tastes great. Really great. So anyway, y'all, enjoy this nice, cool fall weather. Remember to pray for an end to the war in Israel and certainly in Ukraine. My friend in Odessa is still hanging on. Russians are shelling her neighborhood on basically a daily basis, and the drones are really quite dangerous. Whole apartment buildings burning down, and we're just throwing money at it, which I don't approve of. Um, you know, We actually told Ukraine if they gave up their nuclear weapons, we'd protect them from the Russians. I'm not in favor of sending American soldiers to go fight that war, and neither is my Ukrainian friend. She said this is Ukraine's war. Um, but she was certainly in favor of us sending weapons, which that's fine. But I don't get the billions of dollars that seem to be going to corruption and oligarchs and all that. But hey, that's just me. I'm one of those odd people with common sense. But just remember, when we had a strong president in office who actually told Putin, if you invade Ukraine, I will nuke Moscow. Putin didn't invade. Oddly enough, he invaded Crimea under Obama and took it with no consequences. And then you remember Biden, right before the war started, saying, if it's just a little incursion, if they just take a little bit of territory, we'll probably be okay with that. That's what happens when you have a desiccated, feckless, senile moron. You allow him to steal the election and serve as an illegitimate president that is not up to the job and no one has any respect for. So that's my soapbox statement for the day. Pray we get. I'm praying we get Donald Trump back in office ASAP. I hope you'll join me in that. I know he's not everybody's cup of tea, but he was a darn good president. Best president of my lifetime. I could go for some mean tweets and $1.89 gas right now and world peace, because he was the only president in my lifetime that didn't start a war, that didn't get America involved in a war. Even President Reagan took military actions. Not Donald Trump. He did the opposite of speak softly and carry a big stick. He spoke boldly and offensively and carried a big stick, and the world was at peace. He didn't leave $80 billion of weapons and military equipment in Afghanistan and then send $9 billion to Iran to fund an attack against Israel. So, anyway, y'all, just enjoy this beautiful crisp fall weather. It's great to have some good hot, spicy food during a beautiful crisp fall weather. And have a good one, and I'll talk to you next time.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.